June 18th, 1815. On a muddy field in Belgium, 50,000 men are dying. The air is thick with black powder smoke, the screams of horses, and the metallic taste of blood. The fate of Europe hangs on a knife edge. Napoleon Bonaparte, the emperor who brought kings to their knees, is clashing with the Duke of Wellington. This is the Battle of Waterloo. History books will tell you this was a war of nations. They will tell you it was a battle for territory, for ideology, for the soul of France. They are lying to you. While soldiers were fighting for survival in the mud, a different kind of war was being fought 300 miles away in London. A war fought not with cannons, but with paper. Not with cavalry charges, but with information. One man was watching. One man wasn't looking at the battlefield. He was looking at the clock. Nathan Mayer Rothschild. He stood by a pillar in the London Stock Exchange, known then as the Royal Exchange. He wasn't a general. He wasn't a politician. He was something far more dangerous. He was a banker. And on that gray morning, Nathan Rothschild did something that would change the world more than the outcome of the battle itself. He bought the British Empire. They say he bought it for pennies on the pound. They say he bought it with a lie. If you control the money, you control the outcome. And if you control the information, you own the money. To understand the heist, you have to understand the casino. And in 1815, Europe was the biggest, bloodiest casino on earth. The Napoleonic Wars were not just skirmishes. This was World War Zero, a 20-year grinder that chewed up economies and spit out debt. Britain was the bankroller of the anti-Napoleon coalition. But wars are expensive, incredibly expensive. To fund the armies, the British government issued bonds. They called them consols, consolidated annuities. Think of a consul as a share in the British Empire. If Britain wins the war, the value of the bond holds, and the government pays you interest forever. It's the safest investment in the world. But if Britain loses, if Napoleon marches on London, the paper is worthless. The empire is insolvent. Zero. By June 1815, the city of London was trembling. The trading floors were hysterical. Every banker, every merchant, every aristocrat held these bonds. Their entire net worth was tied to the outcome of a battle they couldn't see, fought by men they didn't know. Fear is a powerful solvent. It dissolves rationality. And standing amidst this ocean of fear was the House of Rothschild. The Rothschilds were not just a family, they were a protocol. 5 brothers, sent to the 5 financial capitals of Europe. Amschel in Frankfurt, Salomon in Vienna, James in Paris, Karl in Naples, and Nathan, the shark, in London. They were the first multinational corporation. They were the first decentralized network. Long before the internet, long before fiber optic cables, the Rothschilds understood one fundamental truth of the market. Latency is death. If you know the price of gold in Paris before the market in London knows, you are not gambling. You are printing money. They built a private intelligence agency that rivaled the CIA of today. They had their own ships. They had their own couriers. They had a network of carrier pigeons that flew through storms that grounded lesser birds. While the British government relied on slow, bureaucratic diplomat pouches, the Rothschild network moved at the speed of wings and wind. Nathan knew that in the fog of war, the man with the flashlight is king. It is late in the evening of June 18th. The battle at Waterloo is over. Napoleon is crushed. The French army is in retreat. The British official envoy, Major Henry Percy, begins the long, arduous journey back to London to tell the king. He is carrying the official dispatch. He is carrying the truth, but he is too slow. A Rothschild agent, legend calls him Rothworth, is already moving. He watched the battle unfold. He saw the French lines break. He didn't wait for the celebratory speeches. He jumped on a horse. He rode to the coast of Ostend. He paid a fisherman a fortune to sail across the channel in a deadly storm. The information hit the British coast hours ahead of the official government news. It reached Nathan Rothschild first. Now pause. Put yourself in his shoes. You hold the most valuable piece of information on the planet. You know Britain has won. You know that British consuls, currently trading at distinct lows because of the uncertainty, are about to skyrocket. They are about to become the gold standard of the 19th century. The logical move? The amateur move? Buy. Buy everything. Scream it from the rooftops. We won! Buy! If you do that, the price spikes instantly. You make a profit, sure. A healthy 10%, maybe 20%. But Nathan Rothschild wasn't looking for a 20% return. He was looking for dynastic wealth. He wanted to own the table. He understood market psychology better than any algorithm we have today. He knew that the market doesn't run on facts. It runs on sentiment. And the strongest sentiment is not greed, it is terror. So, on the morning of June 20th, Nathan walked into the Royal Exchange. He walked to his usual spot, the Rothschild pillar. The entire room stopped. The noise died down. Hundreds of eyes locked onto him. They knew he had the best network in Europe. They knew if anyone knew the outcome of Waterloo, it was Nathan. His face was a mask, pale, somber, shoulders slumped. the picture of defeat. He didn't say a word. He simply looked at his traders and gave the signal. Sell. This is the brilliance of the mechanic. He didn't use his capital to buy. He used his reputation to manipulate. He started dumping British consols, thousands of pounds worth, throwing them onto the market. The floor went silent, then it erupted. Rothschild is selling. Why is he selling? He knows. Napoleon has won. Wellington is dead. Britain has fallen. It was a contagion, a viral mental pathogen. The visual metaphor here is a dam breaking. The cracks started small, a few nervous traders selling their positions. Then the water burst through. Panic selling is a feedback loop. As prices drop, margin calls trigger, forcing more selling, which drops prices further. The value of the British consul collapsed. It free fell. It crashed through the floor. Men who were wealthy at breakfast were bankrupt by lunch. They were throwing their bonds away for pennies, desperate to salvage anything before the French arrived to sack London. The price hit rock bottom. The blood was in the streets. The British economy was effectively priced at zero. Nathan stood by his pillar, watching, waiting. The market is not a measure of value. It is a measure of liquidity and belief. Nathan drained the liquidity and shattered the belief. Then, at the precise moment of maximum despair, just moments before the official government messenger arrived with the news of victory, Nathan gave a second signal, a subtle nod. His shadow agents, men nobody knew worked for him, stepped out of the crowd. They bought. They didn't just buy a few shares. They bought the entire supply. They scooped up the debt of the British Empire for a fraction of its true worth. They bought the panic that Nathan himself had manufactured. It was the greatest trade in history. Before we see how the cards fell, realize that stories like this are the blueprint of the modern world. If you want to decode that blueprint and understand the hidden mechanisms of money, make sure to subscribe, because the magic trick was just beginning. Suddenly, the doors of the Royal Exchange burst open. It wasn't a shadow agent this time. It was the truth. Major Percy arrived, exhausted, mud-spattered, holding the dispatches from Wellington. Victory! The shout rang out. Napoleon is defeated. The French are running. The exchange erupted again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was euphoria, a delirium of patriotism and greed. The traders, the same men who had been weeping into their waistcoats 10 minutes ago, rushed back into the pit. They started buying. They bought frantically. They bought with a desperation to reclaim what they had just thrown away. The price of consols rocketed. It didn't just recover, it pierced the ceiling. It went vertical. And in the corner, leaning against his pillar, Nathan Rothschild stood motionless. He watched the green candles on the mental chart in his head. Every point the console rose was a transfer of wealth, a massive vacuum-sucking value from the pockets of the panic sellers and depositing it directly into the Rothschild vault. By the time the dust settled, Nathan didn't just own a large position. He essentially owned the bond market. Now, the history books, the ones approved by the establishment, will tell you this is just a legend. They will call it the Waterloo myth. They will say Nathan was barely there, or that he only made a modest profit. They will release fact checks funded by the very banks that bear his name. They want you to believe it was luck, or good business. But ask yourself, why does a casino ban card counters? Because using information that others don't have isn't business, it's extraction. The illusion is that the market is a level playing field. The illusion is that prices reflect reality. The reality of 1815 is the reality of today. The market is a theater. The news you hear is the script, and the people reading the script are the last ones to know the ending. Nathan Rothschild didn't just make money that day, he performed a hostile takeover of the British government's debt. And when you own the debt, you own the debtor. What happens when you buy a country for pennies? You don't put a crown on your head. That's for targets. That's for people who want to be assassinated. No, you recede into the shadows. You become the plumbing of the state. After Waterloo, the British Empire expanded to cover the globe. The sun never set on the British Empire, but the British Empire was servicing a debt that was held in large part by one family. Every tax paid by a British citizen, every tariff on tea from India, every shipment of wool from Australia, a percentage of that flowed back to pay the interest on the bonds Nathan bought in the panic. This was the death of the old world and the birth of the new. Before 1815, power was land. It was dukes, kings, and emperors. After 1815, power was credit. Nathan Rothschild is famously attributed with saying, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." Whether he said those exact words is irrelevant. His actions screamed them. The 19th century became the Rothschild century. They financed railways. They financed the purchase of the Suez Canal. They bailed out the Bank of England. They became the lender of last resort. Think about that term. When the government fails, when the king is broke, who do they call? They call the banker. This was the moment the hierarchy of humanity flipped. The politician became the employee, the banker became the CEO, and the scary part? It worked. The stability provided by this centralized financial power allowed for the Industrial Revolution to explode. It built the modern world. But the foundation of that world was a lie told in a trading pit in London. So, why does a stock trade from 200 years ago matter to you, sitting there watching this screen today? Because you are still on that battlefield. Look at your world. Look at the news. When a pandemic hits, or a war starts, or a bank collapses, what happens? The media screams panic. Sell. Run. The world is ending. The prices crash. And who is buying? The modern Nathans, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the algorithms that execute trades in nanoseconds. They have replaced the carrier pigeons with fiber optic cables that shave milliseconds off trade times. They have replaced the Rothschild pillar with dark pools and high-frequency trading servers located physically closer to the exchange to get the data faster than you. They know the inflation numbers before you do. They know the interest rate hike before you do. They track your credit card data, your location data, your search history. They have the Ostend boat. You are waiting for the Major Percy dispatch. When you panic sell your crypto or your stocks or your house during a crash, you are the merchant in the Royal Exchange, dumping your future for pennies because you are scared, and they are the ones picking it up. The transfer of wealth during the crisis of 2020 was the greatest in human history. Billionaires added trillions to their net worth while the average person lost their business. It was Waterloo all over again. The mechanism hasn't changed. Only the technology has. The system relies on your ignorance. It relies on your emotional reaction to headlines. It relies on you believing that the price is real, rather than a signal being manipulated by whales. You are not the player. You are the liquidity. Nathan Rothschild died in 1836, the richest man in the world. His fortune was so vast it distorted the calculations of global wealth. He left us a lesson, written in invisible ink on every banknote in your wallet. The lesson is this: chaos is a ladder. For the uneducated, chaos is destruction. It is a reason to hide. For the financial historian, chaos is the only time the board can be rearranged. The Battle of Waterloo killed 50,000 men. It redrew the map of Europe. It ended the reign of Napoleon. But the most enduring victory wasn't won by a soldier. It was won by a man who stood still, said nothing, and let the world's fear do the work for him. We are living in a world built on that day, a world where finance sits above the law, above the crown, and above the people. You cannot fight this system with anger. You can only fight it with understanding. You have to learn to see the sell signal for what it is, a bluff. You have to learn to spot the pigeons before they land. The fog of war is thick. But history is a lighthouse. If you want to survive the next crash, stop looking at the news. Look at who owns the news.